Well, hello, EKN Nation. Welcome to the EKN Radio Network. Again, super thrilled that you guys have tuned in to either the website through ekartingnews.com/radio, or maybe you have downloaded the app from Google Play or iTunes. We are thankful that you're doing that, and very excited about the end of 2018 and moving into 2019 with a lot of new content here on EKN Radio. My name's Rob Howden, the editor-in-chief and publisher of ekartingnews.com, and joined by a guest who I've known for many, many years, and just kind of rolling through this great run of podcasts we have. This is an industry insider. We're going to talk to one of the major players in the sport in terms of national level race teams, driver development, and just a tent and a trailer that you can go to learn, develop, get better, and win. And of course, I'm talking about Mike Rolison from the Rolison Performance Group. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I know that we're pulling you away from the racetrack at the Rio now. You're there for the Rock the Rio event, and of course, the Supercarts USA Super Nationals, the true capper for the season here in North America. But again, thank you so much for joining us here on the EKN Radio Network. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rob. Glad to be here today.
You're back at the Rio. How's that feel? Let's, we're all waiting to get there. David Cole and I don't roll into the Super Nats. I think I get there the Sunday beforehand, but man, back at the Rio again. It's how's it looking so far?
Well, it's looking really good. I'm very happy to be back here. A few of our staff members have also said they're very excited to be back at the Rio. So I don't know what it is about the Rio. The first time I was here was 2002 when I raced myself at a Super Nationals. But there's something in the air here. I think the competitors, at least a few of the kids that I've spoke to, are also excited to be here.
You know, for anybody that's been in the sport a long time or been part of the Super Nationals, of course, this is the 22nd edition of this event. The Rio was where the Super Nats got taken from out on the rock pile, Las Vegas Karting Center / Xplex, whatever we called it, in 97 to 2001. But when Jim Murley and Don Janowski brought it into town, that was it. We brought it into the city for the first time. It just kind of took that race to the absolute next level. And I think anybody that was involved at that point, some of your guys that have worked for you and have worked for you, like a Wesley Boswell or a Bonner Moulton, have had success at the Rio as well. So when they roll in there, they get that feeling of, man, I'm back to a place where I was when shifter kart racing really kind of took that next step.
Totally agree. We've had those same conversations over the last, it's been about a year since it was announced that, the Super Nats was coming back to the Rio. So we're very excited.
Let's start this podcast, Mike, off by giving maybe an opportunity for you to kind of give an overview. I'll spout in as well in regards to what the Rolison Performance Group is. There's going to be lots of racers around the country here that may not run nationally, may not focus on national or regional level racing. They may have heard the name. I'm sure they've probably heard the name Rolison Performance Group. You guys have won a lot of championships and a lot of races, but they may not know much about the overall program. And the reason why I kind of wanted to talk about this is we're going to talk later on in this podcast about what you do in terms of being a racing team. It's not just, hey, here's a cart, we'll tune it for you, you go racing. You really are, for all intents and purposes, let's put a capsule of driver development. It's not a racing school. You're not just a racing team that provides product. You guys really do develop drivers. You're on the racetrack. You go driving with these kids. It's wheel to wheel, one-on-one. Your staff is made up of multi-time champions, not just you, but as I said, Moulton and Wesley Boswell and Mike Beanie. And there's guys that have won races for many, many years. So we'll talk a bit about driver development, maybe ask for some input from you that we can give to a club level racer who's listening to this podcast, who can take something from that and maybe improve their own program. But over an overview, what is the Rolison Performance Group?
Sure. Well, I started kart racing in 1990. And, of course, if you've been in the sport for a while or if you were racing back then, karting was much different back then. I started with my dad with a kart that I bought out of the classifieds of the Oregonian newspaper.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. An old 1981 Emic was my first kart with a Yamaha KT100. Obviously, I love the sport and couldn't get enough of it. And I took my very first laps at Pat's Acres in Canby, Oregon. and we're still driving there today.
Yeah.
But karting is a great sport. It taught me, and is still teaching me today. But as a young man, 13 years old when I got into the sport, it taught me a lot of things, and that's particularly, one of the things that I love the most about karting is not just how to understand how to get around a certain track, or the grip level changing throughout a weekend, or what the kart's doing or what the engine's doing, but you learn so many things in karting: how to win, how to lose, how to deal with authority, race directors, and other competitors. There's just so much to the sport. But back to your question, RPG is really a driver development program. And of course, we've expanded over the years, with the OTK chassis line, and selling karts and parts, and now with Alex Vincent, our in-house engine development program. For me, my passion and what I like to see out of the drivers is really progress and driver development, and that's why we do this.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because you do approach it a little bit differently. You talk about the fact that you got started back in 1990 at Pat's Acres Racing Complex up in Canby, Oregon. Of course, one of the legendary racetracks in the Pacific Northwest. You actually call that track your home base now. When you're, when you're not at a track somewhere else, you've brought the trailer up,
Yep.
and you essentially, you set up shop there at home. It's the track that you use to train your young drivers on. But yeah, to kind of surmise what you said, the cool thing is you guys you're a regional team and a national team in terms of taking drivers to those particular tracks. You also sell product, the OTK line. As you talked about the in-house engine building program now. Driver development, though, so much of about what you do. And, anytime you see a team, Mike, like the one you have, you'll see a young driver who started potentially as in the mini Swift class or whatever, maybe, or junior, whatever, and they work their way into the senior class with you. They start winning championships. They get a chance to, whether it was to go to the Rotax Grand Finals, or you're trying to send guys to the IAME International Final in Le Mans.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to have someone for a long time and them staying with you, I think speaks volumes. Luke Selican being one, a driver who was a young driver that you coached and taught, who has now become essentially one of your coaches underneath your tent, one of your mechanics and coaches. That speaks volumes to me, to be able to have someone in there that the culture that you've developed, people aren't running away from you. They stick with you as long as they can. Yeah,
and that's a great compliment. We're always appreciative of the drivers and the families that want to stick with it and stick with our team. And Luke is a great example of that. Heck, that kid's a better driver than me now. I mean, he's an animal. And like you said, he's able to coach now, and actually quite enjoys it. And he's doing a great job at it. So one of my clients a couple years ago, we had his son for about 2 seasons, and he left. He had a great career in karting, fantastic career, and moved on to the next rung on the ladder of motorsports. And the father told me one day, he said, "Yeah, you did too good of a job. We're leaving. We won everything. We'll see you later."
Well,
that doesn't happen every day, but that's a great compliment. And in fact, that does happen. At some point we had Austin Versteeg, Blaine Rocha, Luke Selican, and McKay Snow, and within 6 months, all 4 of them were gone from the team and had graduated and have and are doing, their own different careers in the next form of motorsports.
I personally, and I've said this many times, I would love to see kids stay in karting for 1, 2, maybe even 3 years in senior, because I think that's where you learn really how to be a karting badass. I think you may think you're the guy when you won a junior championship, but you need to go up and get the elbows up and race against the big dogs before. Personally, I think you're ready to move on to cars. But I want to go back to something you just said there, because you talked about Luke Selican being. You coached him so much and he got all the seat time, and you say he's better than you right now. I'm hearing stories, though, Mike, that potentially you got back behind the wheel at the final round of the Can-Am Karting Challenge and may have laid an ass whooping on some of your drivers and an older go-kart. Is this the truth?
Yeah, I did. I did have a chance to race at Pat's Acres a month or so ago, and I had a lot of fun. And,
how'd it go? Let's not talk about how much fun you had. How well did you do?
Well, I won the race, but I had some luck in there too, Rob. I had some luck in there. Luke was on the track, and he, I think he was just playing with me, and unfortunately, he had a mechanical failure. So I did get to win that race, and I make sure to remind him about that.
Good. I'll make sure that as well throughout this next month. We'll make sure that happens in a big way.
But I'll tell you, just real quick, what a pleasure it was to be able to actually race with some of our upcoming drivers at that event at Pat's Acres. It was just neat. I spend as much time as I can behind the wheel on test weekends and different things, but to be in a race with these kids and watch them and see how well and how much progress they've made, maybe coming from the junior ranks and they're rookies and senior now, or maybe they've been in senior for a couple years and they're starting to get on the podium at these regional races, challenging for the podium at national races. It was pretty cool. It was a proud moment for me to be on the track with those kids.
Yeah, I can only imagine how great that would be. Now, here, let's do this. Let's before we go to a commercial, let's cap off a good, real overview of the Rolison Performance Group. Give me some insight into your staff. You talked about Alec Vincent already, but who else is around you to help out with coaching? I know you guys the driver development's is crucial, but you guys really leverage data acquisition as well. You want to make sure your kids know not just what to do, but why to do it. What the result is of a different corner entry, whatever it may be, carrying more speed here, getting off the brakes a little earlier here. Talk about the crew that you've put around you, so that helps make the Rolison Performance Group so successful.
Wow. Well, there's quite a few. Alex Vincent for our engines is incredible. He's had decades of experience in karting and actually puts in quite a bit of time looking at data and as well giving his opinion on chassis setup. And of course, Bonner Moulton and Mike Beanie are from M Squared Karting in Salt Lake City. Those guys are absolutely incredible. Bonner has his own mellow way, which is very, very great tool, the way he explains things to the drivers and looking at GoPro video and data. He's just incredible on that. And then we've got the veterans like Aaron Nelliton that spends the majority of his time with us at RPG when we're home, and then of course he's on the road with his driver under our tent, and his knowledge in the cadets and further. I mean, he raced for years, was running in Stars of Karting and all these different race series back in the early 2000s and so on. So the experience is incredible. I think we've talked about this before. Between our 5 or 6 staff members, we have over 100 years of experience between all of us, which is wow. We need it. That's what we need. It's so competitive these days, racing against these other strong teams, Speed Concepts, and the list goes on. There's guys out there that are absolutely incredible, and they're trying to do the same thing we are. Right? They're trying to take their drivers to the top.
So much great information coming out, folks, in this edition of the Industry Insider here on the EKN Radio Network. After this break, Mike and I are going to come back again. I'm going to ask him a little bit about how his long history in the sport maybe has shaped the way he has developed his business. We'll talk about the sport itself as well. We've got 2018 to talk about, 2019 to discuss, so much more to come. Stay with us. Lots still to roll out here on the EKN Radio Network. With the season winding down, it's time to start planning for 2019 and how you're going to take your racing to the next level. For so many race winners and championship winners, that choice was obvious. Joining the Rolison Performance Group and its staff of multi-time national champions, Super Nationals winners, and Team USA members. We're dedicated to your development, your constant improvement, and your success. Our goal is to help you raise your game and win races. It's what we do. We win. Our tent is already fully booked for this year's SCUSA Super Nationals in Las Vegas, but we're now reserving spots in our program for the 2019 SuperKart USA Winter Series, the Pro Tour, the Super Nationals, and both the California Pro Kart Challenge and the Can-Am Karting Challenge. If you're looking forward to 2019 and you want to explode out of the gate to put in the best season of your life, call us to reserve a space under our tent for the SuperKarts USA Winter Series. It's been an incredible season at the Rolison Performance Group, and we couldn't be more proud of our drivers and their successes. On the SCUSA Pro Tour, we won the S2 Stock Honda Championship and earned vice champion honors in S1 Stock Honda, X30 Senior, and X30 Masters. In the California Pro Kart Challenge, we won the Mini Swift title, and in the Can-Am Karting Challenge, our drivers were crowned champions in Tag Senior, X30 Junior, and Micro Swift. If you want to fight for championships in 2019, call us. If you want to improve your skills and your chances to win, the answer is the same. Call us at 503-260-4514. The Rolison Performance Group. We race to win. Welcome back to episode number 11 of the Industry Insider here on the EKN Radio Network. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in. My name's Rob Howden. Joined today by Mike Rolison from the Rolison Performance Group, one of the leading race teams in national and regional competition. But the bottom line, just a fantastic place to go if you're a young driver looking to develop your talents and to take yourself to the next level. Mike, before the break, we talked about the team itself, kind of an overview of the staff you had there. We talked a bit about you getting started in the sport as well, and you didn't touch too much on the fact that you say, "Hey, I started here, I had an EMIC," and then you jumped right in. But there were years there when the Pacific Northwest was really one of the toughest places to race anywhere in North America. There was just so many great drivers. The tracks were tight, and racing was aggressive. And you were one of the guys up front. You were winning championships. You were winning races. The question I asked before, I kind of posed before we went to the break, was how has your long history in karting and through the spectrum of all the different types of racing, how has that kind of affected the way maybe you shaped your company and maybe the way you approach the sport right now? Because you've been, you've been there through certain roles of the sport. You were there with the no body work. You were there when the SuperKarts USA Pro Moto Tour started in '99. You were able to win at that level. How has it just kind of affected the way you approach the sport, you think?
Well, it's changed a lot, Rob. Karting has changed quite a bit, as I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I love it today. It's just much different. I think to come from the early 90s and maybe it was 1994, 1995 when JM Racing rolled into one of the big races with a 53-foot semi. We didn't know what it was there for. What is this? Is this a delivery or what's happening? So, and I think that was one of the first really, big rigs in karting. And today, or in 2 weeks at the SCUSA Super Nationals, if you look in the paddock, there will probably be 30 to 40 of those rigs.
Yeah.
So it's changed a lot. There's so many more teams today than there was, let's say, in the earlier mid-90s. So the evolution is pretty extraordinary. But for me growing up racing in the early 90s and mid-90s, like you said, there was incredible drivers in the Northwest. Jason LaPointe, Michael Valiente, and these drivers, some weekends would kick my butt, right? And those guys are quite incredible. Some of them went on to have professional driving careers, insanely good drivers. But that made me better, and it pushed me harder. And that's one of the things that I try and instill in these kids today is that there's always somebody else out there doing another extra practice session. You're going to do 10 practice sessions on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning. Somebody somewhere is going to do 11. And the desire is one of the strongest tools that any driver can have. And I really try and preach that to our kids. That's one of the things that I don't think I was ever the best driver. And I don't think maybe I was ever the smartest, but I sure did want it really bad. Sometimes too bad. But
yeah, it happens.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to have good equipment, but maybe not the best equipment. And it doesn't matter when you pull out onto the racetrack in a kart. There are no pit stops. There are no radios. You can drive down the straightaway and point to your engine all you want, and it's not going to make you any faster during that main event or that heat race, whatever it is. You have what you have. You have to figure out how to get that to the front.
Isn't that something that you think potentially separates some of the drivers who are able to run up front and some of the drivers who just maybe struggle, or as you say, the first thing they're going to do is complain about the engine or whatever it may be, because you don't know what the track's going to be like, especially if it's a day where we're going from wet to dry, or if it's a day where it starts to get hotter and hotter as the day goes on. The track gets sticky, then gets greasy. The really good drivers get out there, and in the first couple of laps, they're able to get a good feel for what the kart's doing, and then they're able to drive above that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They're able to take a kart that may be crap, may just not be working in the situation because the setup you guys made, the change was different. Yeah, they're going to feel it in the first couple laps, but somehow they're able to overcome the chassis differences or the track differences and still turn the lap times they need to run up front. I love when I see that happen. I think that's key.
It is key, and it's the best part about karting. The driver makes the biggest difference. If you show up to the Super Nationals, of course, there's going to be 88 drivers, a full field in X30 Senior. And certainly there's going to be a lot of new chassis and a lot of fresh engines and a lot of exceptional talent. Okay. But if you've got 35 of the best drivers from around the world, they all have very good engines. They all have very good chassis. Well, who wins then? It's obviously the driver that puts it all together that weekend, that wants it most, right?
True enough. I totally agree with that. Now, let's look at the sport a bit right now. You've been doing it for some 30 something years or 20 something years. When you look back at the sport and the waves you've gone through, you're kind of been able to be flexible with the way the sport was evolving. Right now, where do you see the sport going at this point here? It's kind of a philosophical question you may not have been ready for, but where do you see us right now? I'll set the stage. We're in a place now where it's a little different than it was in the past. It's really manufacturer driven in terms of engines. If you're a Rock guy, you're over here. If you're an IAME guy, you're over here. The 206 Briggs guys are this level and they're over here. I personally don't think that's a bad thing. It is what it is. You pick a place and you go racing because there's so much racing going on. It's not like you're going to pick one, you don't get to go racing somewhere. Do you agree with that, or what thoughts do you have on kind of the where the sport is right now and where it may be going?
Well, I do agree. I think it depends on if you're talking about the sport of karting on the national or international level versus on the regional or local level. You touched on the 206 package. That, I think, I've seen it in the Northwest, has been fantastic for local and regional level racers. And now we're seeing, and we just placed our order for 10 KA 100 engines. We're seeing this 100cc air-cooled engine come back very strong. And so for local and regional, and I'm imagining we'll see it on the national level also, there's another great package, right?
I'm interested in your feedback on that because really, what engines were you running, Mike, when you were, when you made your run up through? I don't think you did a lot of forcicle racing if you did any. I would expect you were a Yamaha guy, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe Reed Rotary Heavy or Reed Rotary Light back in the day.
All of the above. Yeah. Didn't race any four cycles, but a lot of KT100s and we were running Formula Y, which was a popular class, which for those that don't know was a direct drive Yamaha KT100 with a.
I drove that.
Yeah. I ran that at a constructor's cup or two in the later 90s. A lot of Perilla TT75s, which is like a reed valve engine, 100cc reed valve. The Comet K71, which was a piston poured engine. A lot of different stuff. The HPV, as it was called back in the day. Yeah.
Have you driven the KA100, and what are your thoughts on it?
I have driven the KA 100 just one session up at Pat's Acres. I think it's a great package. It's pretty quick, and it took me right back to the 90s. An air cooled.
I bet.
It was fun. Yes, it's a quick engine, and it lasts a long time. So that's another great thing. Getting back to talking about where the sport is today, on the national level. I mean, if we look forward to the race in a couple weeks, there's going to be 550 drivers or something like that. It's pretty incredible. And there's some other big national races where we'll get 250 to 300 drivers, 4 or 5 times a year at these big national events. That's great. But that's a different level. It's a different commitment for resources and for time. On the regional level and local level, I think you're going to see things like the 206, which you just don't have to put a lot of money into to maintain it, to keep it going. The same with this 100cc engine. You're going to be able to pick one of these engines up, spend a couple $100 to get it where it should be, and you're going to run it all year. And that, for local and regional karting, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think the key overview, or maybe disclaimer when we start talking about national level racing, is it probably doesn't represent 5% of all the racers who are actually competing, throughout a year in North America. If we throw the number around 15,000 drivers in North America, you're talking 500 to 600 drivers, right, who probably run nationally or have the ability to run nationally. So we're talking 3 to 5%.
Right.
But we had a great podcast last week with Greg Jasperson from Cup Karts North America. He promoted, along with his crew, the Grand Nationals at Newcastle at the end of September, and they had almost 200 drivers and not many crossovers. So almost 200 full drivers running the 206 package, 45, I think, in 206 senior, whatever it was. And I think you're right. We're getting the re-edition of the 100cc air-cooled engine, which has kind of brought back that gap that we really probably haven't had since the Leopard first kind of took over and people were jumping on the Leopard, right? It was right from 4-cycle to the Leopard. We didn't have that medium speed, medium price, medium budget engine in the middle, which we have now. And I think the KA 100 and in turn the Rock version of the 100 really have a lot of people pretty excited right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of interest. I'm getting phone calls and emails about this 100cc package and people's thoughts on where it's going to be allowed to race next year, and locally and regionally, it's a no-brainer to me. I prefer a 2-stroke over the 4-stroke. I love what the 206 has done for the local and regional market, but just from my own personal experience and growing up in the 2-stroke racing, I think this is a great package.
All right, folks, stay with us. When we get back after this next break, we're going to start talking about the Super Nationals. Of course, Mike Rolison with a fantastic group of drivers set to go at this year's Super Nat under the Rolison Performance Group tent. When we get back after this break, we'll chat a little bit about what's going to happen in Vegas here over the next month. From coast to coast, Miami has become the 2-cycle engine of choice for American karting. Starting with the air-cooled 60cc Swift engine and moving through to the incredible X30 power plant, Miami is providing much-needed stability for the sport. The Swift and X30 engines are the backbone of the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour and Pro Kart Challenge Series, as well as the US PKS, the Route 66 Sprint Series, and the WKA Manufacturers Cup. We're thrilled to introduce the new Miami KA100 Rejet engine with a special introductory price of just $16.95 until the end of February. The new engine is getting rave reviews and will be part of the US PKS, Route 66, and WKA Man Cup programs in 2018. Watch for more regions of the country to get on board with this new formula. We have 2 distribution centers in the U.S. to serve you well. Miami East in Mooresville, North Carolina, and Miami West in Temecula, California. The momentum is continuing to build, so it's time to make an investment in stabilizing your engine program. For more information on Miami, head to the website for your region, MiamiUSAEast.com or MiamiUSAWest.com. Welcome back to the Industry Insider, episode number 11 here on the EKN Radio Network. My name is Rob Howden. Thank you so much for tuning in. Joined by Mike Rolison from the Rolison Performance Group, already in Las Vegas to kick things off, as a number of people are, as the Rock the Rio event kicking things off at the Rio All-Suite Hotel and Casino. They'll, of course, make way for the SuperKarts USA Super Nationals, 22nd running of that great race later on, midway through the month. Mike, you're down there. You're locked and loaded. Hopefully you'll have the same hotel room for the entire stay so that you can really get comfortable. Let's talk Supernats. I know you're jacked up about that event. We can talk Rock the Rio as well. Two different events, one venue, odd. There's no doubt about it. It's weird, but it's happening. Let's start with the Rock the Rio. How are things looking so far?
Well, they're looking really well. We're here. The track's laid out. It looks like they've got an entire set of new barriers, so the track looks really sharp. There's the pits are filling up. The big teams are here. Tents are set up, and one of the guys this morning told me they've got over 200 drivers registered for this race. So that's a real positive thing for this staff. And we're bringing 8 drivers here. Many of the drivers, I think 6 of our 8, wanted to come here because they're first-time Supernats entrants. They've not done the Supernats before. So they wanted to come down to a parking lot race, a barrier race, and get their feet wet before they turn back around and come down in 2 weeks for the granddaddy of them all, the Supernats.
No doubt about that. I can see that. I can see the idea of going there to get a feel for it. The visuals are so much different. Just the approach is different. You know, to be honest, just being in Las Vegas is different too. And I think if you're a young driver, it could be a little daunting. You know, there's nothing like. And I liked being down at the Las Vegas Convention Center. That was cool and all. We were right on the Strip. You know, that was awesome. But there's something about the Rio with the Strip as the background. You know, in the evenings when we're under the lights, it's just there's nothing like it North American karting at all. It's just absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. Like I said earlier, there's just something in the air here at the Rio. It's fantastic. And for sure, the drivers get those nerves. And I tell them all the time, hey, those nerves are good. It means you care, right? And so embrace it. It's all right to be a little bit nervous. Embrace it and put your helmet on and get out there and do your job.
I know that you and I talked earlier. You got a pretty packed tent for the Supernats for the SCUSA finale. Would I be asking too much of you to tell me who you think are your drivers who could stand up and potentially win this year, or at least get on the podium? Because you obviously had a tremendous season on the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour with a number of drivers in the top 3, national number plate winners, champions in the series. Just a really good season for you. We'll go back and talk more about 2018, but can I put you on the spot and say, hey, who are the drivers you think have a chance of winning races for
you? I mean, we've got a stable of X30 senior drivers. And of course, I think that's one of the most competitive classes at the Supernats. Of course, KZ is insane with the talent that comes over from Europe. But there's also quite a few drivers that enter into X30 that are exceptional, right? World champions. So that's going to be very difficult class. But we've got drivers that you're familiar with that have run this year on the Pro Tour and Pro Kart Challenge, the Lupian brothers and Hannah and Jacob Gulick, and we've got some drivers from Canada that are pretty strong, from Australia. We've got some. I would say that we have a ringer or two that's coming that is definitely going to have a shot at running up front. It's so hard to say, though.
I know it is.
It's so hard to say. The depth of talent is just incredible. So it's really hard to say. You've been to so many of these. You've seen, championship caliber drivers that fight to get into the main.
That's where I was going with that. Is it's so tough when it comes to the Supernats because over the years, especially of the Pro Tour, right? Supernats started in 1997. The Promoto Tour wasn't even part of that in the early days. When SCUSA restarted the Pro Tour, They did 2 races, the Spring Nats and Summer Nats, and they wrapped up with the Super Nationals. Last number of years, we've had the Winter Nationals, and the Super Nats have been back to being a single race. But how many times, Mike, was there in those early years, probably first 5 years of the Pro Tour, maybe not 6 years of the Pro Tour, 7 years, when the guy that was the 2 guys that were driving and battling for the championship, the number 1 plate, were nowhere near the top 10. And you're right, they were almost battling to get into the main event sometimes. It's just like this racetrack. I know when you're thinking championship, it's kind of a different mindset, but man, you just never know who's going to drop the cart down at a race like this and get super comfortable and be up the front.
Well, you're exactly right. And I think that's one of the draws to this event. That's why it's such a great event. You just don't know. There's so many variables.
Can you talk about how important qualifying is?
Oh, jeez.
Right. Okay, so there you go. We just laugh about it. We know how important it is, but let me go to the other side of the question. And maybe you don't want to let the secret out, but what do you do to prepare your drivers for qualifying? This is something anybody driving, I don't care if you're a 206 or a KA 100 or you're driving your whatever somewhere, qualifying is always super important. And is there anything you do that maybe you always do or everybody does that you can kind of lend to our listeners to get ready for a qualifying session of that much importance?
Well, I mean, we keep it basic. We're always telling our drivers, you practice like you race. So quite simply, the preparation for qualifying at an event like the Super Nationals starts 10 months ago when we're running the SCUSA Winter Series or a California Pro Kart Challenge or a Can-Am Karting Challenge, and we are going out to qualify. We've got to qualify at those races like it's qualifying at the Super Nationals. So you've got to practice that sort of stuff, whether it's on a test weekend or on a Can-Am Karting Challenge regional race weekend, or if it's at the Pro Tour in Newcastle with 60-something X30 seniors. Incredibly important to qualify well there also, but all of those sorts of things add up for an event like the Super Nationals.
I know one of the guys I talked to, this is numerous years ago, and he was kind of filling me in on one of his approaches, and that was you practice, and you're pushing 100%, you're trying to get as fast as you can, and you're dialing your cart in, and so you know what your 100% is. And then what he told me was in his qualifying sessions, he would go out, however long the session was, 5, 7, 10 minutes long. He would go out and he would make sure that he was able to knock off laps what he believed to be the time that he knew he could turn, whatever it was. Let's say it's a 43 flat. He knew he could turn a 43 flat. So he was going to go out there and do everything he could to knock off those laps, essentially about 98% of what he thought he could probably do total. And then he made sure once everything got there and he hit the mark that he wanted, then he was going to let it hang out for a couple laps to see if he couldn't put it on was it that pole lap? Could he go that much further? So he wanted to put the lap in the books first and then lay it out. Is that something that you would say would be interesting for somebody to try?
Well, it's possible for sure. I definitely in today's environment, how many karts are on the track and when the tires come in can dictate if you could run a qualifying session of 7 minutes like that. It's certainly possible, and it's a good approach. But you've also got to take into account lap traffic, right? And when your tires come in, and depending on the temperature and the track and how much rubber is down, you often have a shorter window than that. You may have a 3-lap window or 4-lap window.
It's very, very interesting you say that, because that's something that I heard when we were on the road to Indy this year, and they were talking about all the different variables, Mike, and you nailed it, right? It's your tire, that it has whatever the sweet spot is. You need to hit number one, you need to choose the right tire pressure to hit the sweet spot of the tire based on the temperature of the track at that point, which you could never know of, right? Because you're trying to prep the car before you go out. And all that while, you have to make sure you don't have any traffic when you hit that sweet spot, that limited lap of sweet spot, no traffic, and then your driver has to get the job.
It's the best, man. That's why it's racing.
I love qualifying so much.
Put it all together. Yeah. So it's fantastic.
That's awesome. All right, folks, again, let's have one more quick break here. When we get back, we're going to talk to Mike Rolison about 2018, some of his highlights, look at 2019, then, of course, we're going to throw the EKN Fast 5 at him to wrap up today's podcast. Stick with us. More to come here on the EKN Radio Network. Since 2003, K1 Race Gear has been a one-stop shop for all your indoor and outdoor karting needs. From racing shoes, suits, and driving gloves to chest protectors, rib vests, accessories, and bags, K1 Race Gear provides quality karting products for the enthusiast and the professional alike. We have an incredible lineup of K1 karting suits designed to fit everyone's budget. Check out our entry-level GK2, the new Apex 2, and our top-of-the-line Speed 1 suit. Then, choose from our Apex and RS1 karting gloves and add in our K1 shoes, rib protectors, and neck collars. If you need a custom suit to support your sponsors, we can create a custom look as unique as you are. As you would expect, our custom suits are made to order. With pricing as low as $495, you're sure to find a suit that not only satisfies your racing needs, but is easy on the wallet as well. We take care of all of our customers at K1 Race Gear, not just the ones with deep pockets. Visit K1RaceGear.com today and get everything you need for your next racing season. Welcome back to the EKN Radio Network, the 11th episode of the Industry Insider. Mike Rolison and I getting a little giddy there that right before the commercial talking about qualifying. I will admit qualifying probably one of my favorite parts of any race, because in a race there are times where we can kind of settle in and you kind of know the outcome. Top 5 drivers may be separated by a couple of kart lengths. I'm calling out splits, but things kind of lock in. Mike, when it comes to qualifying, you just never know, because you never know over a 7-minute session, 8-minute qualifying run, whatever it is at the Supernats or any race you're at, you never know who's going to be able to uncork one at the very end.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
And especially when you're talking about, some of these fields, 80, 90, 100 drivers that you just don't know.
And a hundredths of a second from first to fourth, whatever it may be.
Or thousands.
Crazy. Yeah. Or thousands, yeah. All right, so again, Mike Rolison from the Rolison Performance Group joining us here on the EKN Radio Network. Mike, let's, as a team, we outlined who you guys are, what you do, the focus and passion you guys have for driver development, some of the kids that have worked their way up through your ranks from kids to young adults, which again, as I said, kind of speaks volumes. When you look back at 2018, what are the highlights for you as a team owner? From the guy, we always see up on top of the RPG trailer, kind of, watching over your flock, watching over your crew. What are some of the highlights that you go, man, this was a great year. This was fun.
Well, there's so many, Rob. For us, it started back in January to be able to go out and be part of the SCUSA Winter Series was great. We had some great finishes out there, and of course this year we had a handful of drivers moving out of junior and into senior, so they were rookies, and then we had a handful of drivers out of cadets and into junior, so this was their rookie year in junior. And, we had Graham Trammell in the micro category coming onto the national scene. So, although we had driven micro the past year, this was kind of a rookie year for him on that level. And all of our drivers had highlights this year, from the SCUSA Winter Series to the California Pro Kart Challenge to the Pro Tour. It was a really great year for us.
Did you look back at one or two races, or obviously was it a championship in the S2 class this year, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Pedro Lopes in S2.
Pedro Lopez,
Yep. And battled for the championship down to the wire in X30 Master and X30 Senior. Had some breakout runs for our junior drivers on the Pro Tour, as well as Graham in the micro category. Kyle Wick kicking butt in F1 in his rookie year. The list goes on. That's what I'm thinking.
He was one that I want. He was one of the ones I wanted to pitch to you. Him and Hannah Greenmeyer. I'll start with Hannah. I've already said once in this podcast, and I probably say it in almost every podcast, that I would love to see drivers stay a couple years in senior, because I think that's really when you become a driver. You're not just a karter, you're not a junior racer trying to move up the ranks. It's the reason why a guy like Jake Craig or Oliver Askew or Kyle Kirkwood has done so good in cars is because they spent those years really working it in the senior category. This is not welterweight boxing. This is top level UFC stuff to be at
Correct.
that level. And you could just see Hannah every race getting better and better and more confident, more aggressive. I'm sure you guys saw that. I'm sure you guys were teaching that and pushing that. But, man, I was really impressed with the way she developed throughout the season.
For sure. Very impressive year. And to touch on what you were saying, you're exactly right. The speed, oftentimes we can see from a driver, the speed comes first, and then it's what you do with it, right? And how you can come through the pack, or how you can race up front, right? You're learning and honing your skills on racecraft. And then it's about feedback, and the feedback that a driver can come in and we can plug our computers in and we can look at all the data, but the driver is our best data acquisition tool that we have. So if a driver can come back and say, I understand that this is what the computer says, but this is also what I was feeling. And if those things correlate for a chassis tuner or an engine tuner, it doesn't get any better than that. To be getting quality feedback from your driver is huge. And that's what separates those names that you were talking about that are climbing the ladder in motorsports. It's not just that they're badasses on the racetrack that they can adapt to a kart. They can bring information back to their engineer. And that separates them from everybody else. If you can bring information back to your team on a consistent basis, accurate information, obviously, you have a real shot. That's just my opinion. I'm a go-karter.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure. And that's echoed by a lot of the engineers I talk to in the road to Indy who will say that some guys just can bring feedback and some cannot. Now, let's talk a little bit about how about your prep for Kyle Wick jumping from S2 into the S1 category. One of the differences between S1 and X30 senior, I think, drivers coming out of junior is a lot of the guys in the top drivers still even in junior are 16, 17, 18 years of age. Whereas in the shifter kart categories, you're racing against almost men to a certain extent. You know what I mean? There's guys that are 19, 20, 21 or older running in that category. You're going against a guy like a Billy Musgrave and a Jake French and AJ Myers, and some of these absolute badasses, whether it's Ronnie White, veteran driver like he and Nick LeDuc. How did you guys, or can you give me some insight, at least to maybe how you prepped Kyle to jump to the pro class and shifter, and how would you characterize the way he was able to adapt to what was a really challenging situation?
Well, I mean, Kyle's been racing for a long time. He's been karting for a long time, and he's had some experience in shifter, obviously ran very strong in S2 last year. So it was the basics. It was what we were just talking about. It was communicating with Wes or with his dad or with Ewan about what his CRG chassis was doing and what he wanted it to do. And Kyle was honing those skills this year. He can lay down the lap. There's no question. You can see that. Look at the Phoenix Pro Tour. That was impressive. Yeah, I think he had a pretty big lead on Saturday in the final and came home second on Sunday. It was a great weekend. It's back to the basics. It's managing your tires, right, on a shifter, on a moto engine, especially that 110 degree heat or whatever it was in Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
A lot of folks can go out there and put it in the first row or the top 2 or 3 rows in S1, but can you manage your tires through the pre-final and then still have something left to fight with in the final? So, and Kyle was continuing to hone those skills this year, and obviously he's doing a pretty damn good job at it. You can see his results.
Yeah, I think he'll be impressive to watch. You have to remember that he made his S1 debut last year at the Super Nationals, and we'll be back again this year with a full season under his belt. Of course, a lot more confidence, a lot of momentum. It'll be really, really interesting to see what he does when we get to the Super Nationals in a couple of weeks. Now, Mike, let's cap off this particular segment with your plans for 2019. Where, what is Rolison Performance Group focused on? What series are you going to be running? And just give your thoughts on next year.
Sure. Well, first we got to get through the Super Nats. We got to finish the Rock the Rio here, and then we got to get through the Super Nats, and then my guys are going to need some time off. I don't think that even if I called them, I don't think they're going to answer. Uh,
Yeah, I understand that.
they need some time. We've been prepping for 30 days.
We didn't touch on how many races did you guys actually do this year? How many races was the Rolison big rig or your satellite rig at? How many races was it at this year?
I'm not.
Do you know how many miles?
No, I don't want to count the miles that I drove this year.
Yeah.
Probably.
I don't want to. I hear that.
I would imagine it was somewhere around 32 to 36 weekends this year that we were racing, and then we've got to sprinkle in, half a dozen or more test weekends, leading up to a pro tour or something, and then of course our driver coaching weekends oftentimes are at Pat's Acres. A lot of weekends, Rob. A lot of weekends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it though. I love it.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm exactly the same way. I love what I do. I'm home for 6 weeks and I'm going crazy right now. I cannot wait to get back to the track. It's driving me a little crazy now. So 2019, it was same kind of run. Are we doing Winter Series, California Pro Kart Challenge, SCUSA Pro Tour, Can-Am Karting Challenge? That kind of the same focus this year?
Yep, we're on board for all of those events, and we'll see what else pops up. This is the time of the year when all the schedules are out or are coming out literally this week, last week, in the coming weeks. So we'll put together a master sheet that'll have 50 to 60 events on it across North America, and we always get that information to all of our clients, and collectively we decide where we're going to go.
Yep. Understood.
Yep.
Okay. All right, listen, let's cap off. We'll do a wrap up when we're all said and done here, but I want to pull out the EKN Fast 5. I think we might have did with you a while back, but let's do it again because we're here in 2018 now. The EKN Radio Network, of course, not even a year old and picking up a ton of speed. We appreciate that everyone who has downloaded the app, whether it's through iTunes or Google Play, or if you just listen on your phone through the website, ekartingnews.com/radio. 24/7, 365 karting content. All our podcasts, all the EKN Trackside Live races are all on there. The play-by-plays, usually just the main events we have on there. We're going to keep developing this over the offseason, folks. This is going to be a lot of fun. But let's get back at. So I got 5 questions for you, talking about your world, your time in karting. Mike Rolison, are you ready for the EKN Fast 5? All right. We already really answered the first question, but I'm going to bring it up again. You can give us some detail on it. Tell us again, what was your first kart? Give us some detail.
1981 Emic with a Yamaha KT100, purchased out of the classified ads of our local newspaper.
I think that's awesome. Okay, now, to give some of the younger guys a little bit of reference, what kind of bodywork, if there was any?
There was no bodywork on that.
Do you have a driver fairing at least, or just a number panel?
Just a number panel.
Isn't that the best? Old school, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I think that would...
Two-piece wheel.
Yeah. What's that? Wheels. You drove two-piece wheels.
Yeah, two-piece wheel. You had to...
And it was an Emic, so you probably drove it on 2 wheels, right?
Yeah. Yes, probably. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Hard.
Yep.
That's good. Two-piece wheels. Right? Isn't that old? And people, here's the thing, too, about nowadays, right? Their karts weigh so much these days because of all the bodywork, the rear bumpers, the front bumpers. Those things back then were so fast because there was no heavy bodywork on them.
Correct. Yeah, so the weight, to give you an idea, the weight for junior sportsmen, a category that we ran in the early 90s, was 280 pounds. So today's weight is 320 or 330 pounds.
50 pounds lighter just because of the bodywork, right?
And water-cooled engines, the bodywork, just technology. Yeah.
Yep, that's what it is. All right, question number 2. What is your favorite racetrack?
Man, that's tough. I would probably, the first thing, I have a lot of favorite tracks, but for me personally, a track that's not open anymore, that's in the center of the state of Washington, it's called Wenatchee. It's the name of the city. There's a track out there, Pangbourne kart track, right next to the airport. That track was built in the early early 90s, 1991, I think, somewhere around there. And unfortunately, it was closed down about 2005, 2006, the city politics, noise, different things like that. But that was a fantastic track. Absolutely fantastic. Elevation changes, long straightaway, wide, smooth.
Good stuff. All right, question number 3. What was the biggest win in your karting career?
Maybe the Rotax Grand Nationals, maybe. That was a pretty big deal.
Okay. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. All right, let's go to question number 4. Who was your biggest karting rival?
Oh, that's a tough one.
If you got to say a couple, that's fine.
Joey Hand. He beat me almost every national race that I went to against him. I think he's one of the best drivers that I grew up with. Dang, he's good.
Factory driver for him?
Yeah. Right. I think I beat him a couple times, but boy, is he good. But the IKF Grand Nationals was the biggest race every year back in the early and mid 90s. That was the race that everyone looked forward to going to just once a year. And I always look forward to that, to trying my hand.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Final question of the EKN Fast 5. Who has been your biggest mentor or influence?
Oh, that's tough. In the karting industry or
I love the fact people obviously know that we don't prep you guys on these questions, right?
I'm caught off guard on that one. I have a mentor named David Zimmerly back at home.
Yeah,
that's fun. Actually, his boys race karts. He raced karts. So he understands the sport of karting, but he's been my biggest mentor over the years. Not directly involved in karting anymore, but gosh, I've had so many of them in the karting world that I've got to learn from. Different guys that have run shops that I've learned so much from. You never stop learning in this sport. If you think you know it all, you're probably going to get your ass kicked next week.
That's exactly it. Thank you so much, Mike. You got through the EKN Fast 5. I appreciate it. Listen, let's wrap up. So, talking all about what you guys do. If somebody's trying to take their kid to the next level, they want to hook up with you, what's the best way to get a hold of Mike Rolison?
Email me, call me on my phone. Everyone knows, including my staff, they're always giving me the business. I'm always on my phone, text or WhatsApp or talking on the phone or emails. So you can email or call me anytime.
What's the email address?
Rolly, ROLI 5000 at hotmail.com.
And
503-260 4514.
There you go. You can always contact them through Rolison Performance Group as well on Facebook, the Rolison Performance Group website as well. Mike, I appreciate you joining me, man. This has been fun. This is I love getting insight from people that have been around the sport for a long time and for people that understand what this sport's about. The very start of the podcast, you just mentioned how great of a sport this was because, and I've said it so many times, it's a sport where I don't care who you are involved, you're constantly evolving throughout a race weekend. You're having to deal with different problems, different situations, different platforms and scenarios the entire time. And I think when it comes to developing life skills, karting transfers over to so many parts of life.
Thank you very much, Rob. It was great.
Thank you, Mike. Enjoy yourself in Las Vegas. David Cole and I will see you out there when we get for the Supernats, but good luck to you and your team throughout this entire run through
Thank you, Rob.
November.
Thanks. Have a great afternoon.
Folks, one of the greatest in our sport in terms of drivers and industry. He's been around for almost 30 years. Mike Rolison from the Rolison Performance Group, truly one of the finest driver development programs in the country here in 2018 and into the future. Folks, again, episode number 11 of our Industry Insider podcast. Mike Rolison, fantastic guest for us. We got so much more to come here on the EKN Radio Network. Get ready, of course, for live coverage of the SuperKarts USA Super Nationals, EKN Trackside Live, our 25th event of the 2018 season. David Cole and I will be there to bring you everything you want to know about the greatest race on earth. Take care, folks. My name's Rob Howden. Bye for now.